program. We have a lot of information to get through today, and our agenda is going to provide an overview on what you can expect. The speaking portion of our presentation will take about 25 minutes, and we have 5 speakers, and they are Greg Johnson, our program administrator, Craig Green, the assistant program administrator, Steve Witter, our transit lead, Ray Navy, our assistant program administrator, and Chris Regan, our environmental manager. We will launch into a question and answer portion immediately following our presentation. After the Q&A, you will have the opportunity for one-on-one interviews. And we have also reserved a space in the parking lot that has a beautiful view of the existing Interstate Bridge that is available to you to use for any stand-ups. So following the Q&A, we'll take a brief break, and then we'll be available for the interviews. So we will conclude our interviews at 12 p.m. The media staging area will remain open until 12:30. And if you need more time, please let us know. We will do our best to accommodate you. If for any reason we need to end this press conference due to a disruption or another issue, we will do so, but please be assured we will make ourselves available to you. So thank you again for being here today. And it is my great pleasure to introduce to you our program leader, Greg Johnson.
Good morning, everyone. Once again, my name is Greg Johnson. I'm the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program Administrator. So I was telling our team that mega projects are filled with moments of frustration and very few moments of joy. This is one of those moments of joy when we hit a significant milestone. So the release of the draft supplemental document is a very key milestone that for not only this project, but for the community. So we're going to take you through what this NEPA document is and what the purpose of the work that we've been doing over the last 2.5 years involved. So let's go to the next slide, please. So the first thing is, what is NEPA? You'll hear that term. NEPA is an acronym for the National Environmental Policy Act. And that's an act that was implemented in 1970 and meant to take these public impacting projects through a process where you have the public involvement and you look at impacts and benefits to an investment that has federal dollars in it. So the federal government and the agencies are required to assess and disclose environmental impacts and propose actions prior to making the decision. So we are at that stage now where we are putting out what those impacts are, and we will come back with our proposed actions to deal with those. So we ensure that agencies consider public comments as part of the decision-making, as well as we document this process extensively in what is called the environmental impact statement, in our case, the supplemental environmental impact statement. So once again, this is the time where we expect the public to weigh in and tell us what they think of the work that has been done thus far. So if we can go to the next slide. So this is a slide that tells everyone why we are doing what we are doing. This is a purpose and need slide. There are 6 purpose and need statements. One is safety, the other is impaired freight movement, congestion, earthquake vulnerability, inadequate bike and pedestrian facilities, and limited public transportation through this corridor. So these are the issues that we are trying to solve for and that you will see explained extensively in our document. So let's go to the next slide. So what are we studying in this draft supplemental environmental impact statement? So we are looking at what is called a modified locally preferred alternative. And this is what the 10 transportation partners that are associated with this program told us were what they considered critical for us to look at. So we are comparing that to a no-build alternative. And we did a number of questions. Why aren't you comparing it to a third bridge? Why aren't you looking at a tunnel and a number of other things? Those items were looked at in the earlier phase of the Columbia River crossing, and they were found not to meet the purpose and need of this program. So we are comparing that modified locally preferred alternative to a no-build alternative. But what we are also doing is looking at design options. So these design options are key critical to informing what this project could look like. So you'll see that the modified locally preferred alternative includes a improvement to the existing active transportation, the bike, walk, and roll facility. It builds a new bridge over the main span of the Columbia River. And it also rebuilds the bridge over the North Portland Harbor. We also will have light rail extended from the where the yellow line ends at Expo Station all the way up to Evergreen Street. And this time it will hug along the I-5 right-of-way and not go through the downtown, disrupting downtown Vancouver. We will be modifying 7 interchanges. And this is key critical because 70% of the traffic that crosses the bridge either gets on or off on one of these 7 interchanges. So these interchanges are key critical to safety and congestion in the corridor. So the no-build alternative is what we would do if we don't make these modified locally preferred investments. So this is key. And you can see on this slide, we have a number of items that detail what the modified locally preferred alternative is. This is a very busy slide, but once again, you should have copies of this in your press packages. But once again, this shows you the physical impact of our program area and what we're planning on doing. So my last slide is the technical areas that we evaluated. So you can see that we looked at the transportation impacts, including air quality, aviation, energy, greenhouse gas emissions, navigation, noise, and vibration. The community impacts. We're going to have impacts on this community with an investment of this size. So the cultural resources are very important. We have been having a 4-year-long conversation with the tribal governments in the area, as well as the other federally recognized tribes so they can understand what we are proposing and give us feedback. We're also looking at other things such as environmental justice, land use, the impacts on neighborhoods. So that is a critical component of this draft supplemental document. Also, you will hear in more detail about the environment. We're going to be talking about our impact on climate change, the ecosystems in the area, the water quality. We are very proud of one of the elements that we are proposing is to capture stormwater in a enclosed system. Currently, that stormwater goes directly into the Columbia River with all the debris that washes in. We are looking to capture that, treat it in the drainage basins, and send cleaner water back into the Columbia River. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Assistant Program Administrator Frank Green.
Thank you, Greg. As Greg mentioned, I'm Frank Green, Assistant Program Administrator, and I'm going to share some of the transportation findings that are within our draft supplemental EIS. Just to summarize, we do see that with the proposed investments that we will be building with the modified locally preferred alternative, that there is a reduction in crash, so an improvement in safety throughout the corridor. We do see that person throughput through the program areas and including the bridge does increase with the addition of active transportation that's more beneficial and safer for the people who choose to use that, as well as addition of transit. We will also talk a little bit through the congestion and travel time that the build options are able to improve through the corridor. So the first thing I wanted to talk through is the safety aspect of the program. As Greg mentioned, it's one of the pieces of our purpose and need for the program. As you look at this current existing conditions, we see a significant amount of accidents and crashes that are caused by the geometry and the configuration of those 7 closely spaced interchanges, as well as the bridge itself, knowing that there's narrow lanes for the freeway and no shoulders. So over a 5-year period before we began this study, we saw almost 1,800 crashes in this 5-mile corridor. So it is a high accident location within the I-5 system. We did see 7 fatal incidents within that 5-year period, as well as 17 serious injury crashes. And so with the investments that we're looking, we do compare the build options to the no build that Greg had mentioned we're studying, and we look to project out to the 2045 timeframe. So we use regional modeling to look at what the travel patterns for this region will be. With the no build alternative, we see that we project that crashes could increase 28% over the crashes that I just mentioned we've seen in the existing. With any of our build options, we do see, because of the improvements that we can make to the closely spaced interchanges, how they connect to the freeway, and the improvements on the bridge, as well as the addition of auxiliary lanes, that crashes can be reduced 13 to 17% with any of the build options for the modified liquid preferred alternative. Person throughput is another key piece of the transportation measures that we looked at in our draft SEIS. So we see significant improved and increased person throughput with the modified locally preferred alternative. That is both in cars and freight, but also with the addition of the high-capacity transit light rail, as well as improvements to the bicycle and pedestrian facilities. That's about a 35% increase from today to the person throughput that the bridge and the new program can handle. In seeing that increased person throughput, we also are saying we don't see that that's all in cars because of the added active transportation as well as transit modes that we're proposing. We actually see a decrease compared to the no build in the amount of vehicles and therefore the vehicle miles traveled that would be crossing the bridge. So the total amount of vehicles that are projected in the no build is about 180,000 compared to today, which is in the 143,000. And with the build scenarios I mentioned, with the addition of some additional options and modes, we're at about 175,000. So about 3% reduction in the persons that are going through the program using vehicles because of the choices that are provided. As we talk through the amount of persons that are able to go through the program, the question then becomes, what do we see as far as travel times and congestion? So we do see a reduction in travel time through the program with the inclusion of the program, as well as congestion. Speaking to travel time specifically, the document will disclose some examples of travel time through the program area. This is a 5-mile corridor, so we know there's some congestion caused outside of the program limits. But the example that we have that we're sharing right now is about a 12.5-mile trip if you start from I-205 in Washington and go to I-405 in Oregon, that we see about an 8-minute or 4 to 8 minute reduction in the build scenarios compared to the no build for the southbound direction in the morning. And you see a bigger increase in travel or benefit in travel times than the northbound. So in total, that 12.5-mile trip in the 2045 timeframe with our projections would take about 100 minutes with the no build, and it'll take somewhere between 64 and 80 minutes with the build options. How does that equate to congestion? We do see that currently there's about 10 hours of congestion in the existing. That will grow in the 2045 timeframe because of the increase in the growth within our region, but somewhere between 14 and 16 hours. So pretty much meaning daytime hours through this corridor, we would see congestion pretty much the entire duration of the day. With the build options, we do see a reduction for both southbound and northbound. As I mentioned, there are some congested areas of the I-5 system outside of the program areas that would potentially be backing up into our program. But you can see from the information that we have in the draft SEIS that the southbound congestion would reduce from about what could be 16 hours on a no build to somewhere between 4.5 and 4.75 hours. And northbound, we see that could reduce from about 14 hours to somewhere between 6 and 9. One of the key things of the congestion isn't just the duration through the day, but the distance of congestion. In the build options, the distance of congestion is less as well than the no build options. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our transit lead, Steve Witter.
Good morning, I'm Steve Witter. I'm here to talk about transit travel time, ridership, and park and ride options. The modified locally preferred alternative adopted a multimodal transit investment in light rail and express bus, and an express bus that can operate in the shoulders, avoiding traffic congestion during those heavy travel times. The project seeks to connect the Max Light Rail with the Vine BRT system and come up with a regional solution for both the Vancouver and Portland communities. We've studied the travel times for each mode, and each travel time is stated here, and I'll state for you, between downtown Vancouver and Pioneer Square in downtown Portland. Under the modified LPA, the travel time for light rail is 47 minutes between those 2 points. If we look at express bus in the LPA, in the modified LPA, a travel time is 59 minutes compared to 48 minutes in the no build. And that might seem sort of an inverse, but what we see is the amount of vehicle traffic, as Frank said, that grows in our the next 20 years actually puts more bottleneck there at the I-5 split with the near the Rose Quarter. In the northbound trip, the express bus is actually a significant travel time savings over the no build. And when we look at the option with one aux lane, it presents a 22-minute savings for those that are headed back north in the afternoon hours. Next slide. The purpose of the transit investment is to expand transit options across the Columbia River. With the investments in light rail and express bus, the number of riders across the bridge will increase by 96%. The IDR program continues to do modeling with the Federal Transit Administration and will refine numbers as we move closer to construction. Under the modified LPA, there would be approximately 12,500 new transit riders overall in the corridor on a weekday, and that's a 96% increase, as I stated. These new riders are part due to a shift to transit as a new alternative in the corridor. With the modified LPA, the number of daily transit boardings in the TriMet and C-Trans systems overall grows by 2.9%. And here we are looking at park and rides. The program is studying 5 different park and ride potential sites. The program may choose 0 park and ride. The program may choose or 1 or 2 park and ride options. And so those are under study and will be refined. 3 sites were considered at the waterfront for park and ride, and there were 2 sites considered near the terminus at Evergreen Street. So with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Ray.
Hi, good morning. I'm Amy, Assistant Administrator over the program. I'm going to be here sharing information around navigation impacts, acquisitions and displacements, as well as economic impacts. So with the bridge, regardless of the configurations we've discussed, the modified LPA is expected to impact benefit river navigation in several ways. One, it will reduce the amount of in-water piers because of a modern replacement bridge that has longer spans. Those longer spans also increase the horizontal distance, opening up river navigation to spans of 400 feet long. We'll also improve river navigation through reconfiguration of the navigation channels, which also reduces out-of-direction travel for the vessels transiting up and down the river between the river bridges and the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad Bridge. Also, will increase seismic resiliency with replacement of these bridges with a modern scientific resilient structure to help prevent a collapse in case of a large earthquake. If there is an earthquake that causes a collapse, that would, and there's a version of water, that would be an impediment to river navigation. And then lastly, we were looking at fixed span options and movable. A fixed span option would provide 116 feet of vertical clearance, whereas a movable span would provide up to 178. Next slide, please. So this is a few graphs I would like to walk through. The top chart shows the profile of the different alternatives, or not alternatives, excuse me, configurations of the bridge. The very top line shows the top deck of the double deck fixed span option, which carries vehicular traffic. Just underneath that is the lower deck of the double deck span that would carry transit as well as bikes and pedestrians. That level also coincides with the deck level of the fixed span single level bridge, which would carry all modes of traffic at that level. Now, in both of these configurations, 116 feet of vertical clearance is provided. And the span lengths of 400 feet also provide wider navigation channels. Just underneath that, the dashed line shows the single level movable span option, which provides a vertical clearance of between 90 and 100 feet when in its closed position. But in its open position, 178 feet of clearance, which is the existing clearance at the opening height of the existing bridge. And then just beneath that, you can see the kind of hash line, which is the profile of the existing bridge. Next, I'd like to turn your attention to the chart in the lower left. It is the existing navigation channels. Top of that chart or picture is looking west. So the yellow line is the primary channel. I could call your attention to that. That shows the navigation channel of the primary channel on the north side of the river. In the proposed navigation changes, we see that moving south to align more with the crest of the replacement bridges, provide additional clearance for the primary channel. And it reduces some of those out of directional travel movements of the vessels between the bridges. Next slide, please. So projects of this size, like ours, that have new elements and modified elements will have impacts to property. And in this case, we've quantified that in a couple different ways. One is just area space. We've quantified that we've got 47 acres of potential displacements that we've studied. And that varies depending on the options that are triggered on or off. Looking at the 2 auxiliary lanes, if you add a second auxiliary lane, it increases by 1/10 of an acre. As opposed to the parking rides at Library Square, that would have an additional impact of 3.16 acres. Now, that also boils down to actual acquisitions. So we're looking at potential displacements of 43 residential units, 36 businesses, and 1 public use site. And again, those numbers vary on the different options. It's important to know that as we do this work, we are always looking for ways to avoid and minimize the impacts to property, and that will be continuing focus on this program moving forward. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, I'll also be talking about economic impacts. This program is expected to impact and benefit the economy in several ways, including freight mobility, from the travel times and speeds mentioned in previous discussion, that will improve freight mobility. We'll also see improved economic activity opportunity for everyone due to some of those faster and more reliable travel times. We'll also see some reduced property tax revenue from some of those displacements I mentioned earlier. And then lastly, the displacements of the businesses would have an impact to employment in the region. And we've estimated that at 600 jobs. Next, I'd like to turn it over to our environmental manager, Chris Reed.
Thank you, Ray. So for my part, I'm going to talk about 5 slides of findings and then also share how to access and provide public comment on the environmental document. So let's start with the Executive Order on Environmental Justice, which requires federal agencies to consider how impacts might disproportionately adversely affect the minority and low-income populations. And for the most part, the IBR program has very similar impacts between populations in the program area, but there are some specific issues where there are higher levels of impact. That includes implementing a toll within the program area has a higher impact to low-income households than it would for higher-income households. Another example of that is when there's a number of properties next to I-5 that are EJ-centered areas that require that when you with acquisitions and with acquisitions and relocations, there is some change to a greater impact to those equity populations. Next slide, please. With climate chapter, the ability to provide opportunities of mode share for low and no carbon transportation options is going to greatly reduce the amount of greenhouse gas emissions in this area and help us to meet our local, regional, and statewide goals for reducing climate change and achieving the climate future we're after. In addition, our document will describe opportunities for construction materials and ways that we design resilience to ensure that we can meet our climate future with a program that's successful. When we look at water quality, as Greg had said earlier, one of the greatest benefits of the program is changing a system that has no current treatment for stormwater that flows into the Columbia River and instituting stormwater facilities that will ensure that over 190 acres of impervious surfaces are treated with stormwater treatment before it goes into the Columbia River. Also, anytime that there is construction within the Columbia River, there's a potential to impact habitat for sensitive species. Within our environmental document, we are going to ensure that bridge removal and replacement that might impact those facilities or might impact that habitat is mitigated for. And right now, although we don't have specific details, we are working with regulating agencies, and we will ensure that local, state, and federal regulations are met for offsetting impacts of that habitat. Along with the direct, indirect, and temporary effects that we describe within our document, we also look at cumulative effects, which is a combination of IBR's impacts along with past, present, and reasonably foreseeable future actions. So within the cumulative effects, there are a number of impacts categories. There are cumulative effects that provide benefit. There are cumulative effects that have adverse effects overall. There are shared effects that have both beneficial and adverse impacts. And then there's negligible cumulative impacts as well. Next slide, please. Within each chapter of the draft supplemental EIS, we identify potential ways that we can avoid, minimize, and then mitigate impacts of the IBR program. There are a number of things that we can do when we get to mitigation. There's regulatory ways to mitigate, for example, wetland compensation. There's standard ways that we can mitigate. So for example, implementing BMPs for dust abatement during construction, or applying the stormwater runoff manual to treat new roadways that we build within the program area. There's also program-specific mitigation, such as hiring an assist tug that helps navigate through the maritime traffic through this area when we're constructing and demolishing the bridge. This is a great opportunity. So we've done everything we can to bring to the point information to the public so that they can be part of this historic monumental endeavor. We want to ensure that the information is available, that the documents are accessible, and that the comments that we receive best influence the path forward. The amount of information that we've provided at public outreach will continue forward, but we're trying to get information so that people know how to make comments, where to make comments, and what best will influence the team as we move forward with the IPR program. So for example, we want to make sure that all comments are submitted through the official channels of the EIS. Should be written, provided at public testimony, or recorded and transcribed. We also, there are some rules that we need to make sure are also part of this. We can't include hyperlinks within comments. We can provide opportunity for attachments, but those attachments should be cited. And they should show how those attachments affect the comments that are trying to be provided by the public. And next slide. All audio and video components must be transcribed so that they're part of the written record and then can be part of the final supplemental as we move forward. The document, as Greg said this morning, the draft supplemental EIS is now available on the IBR's website. Our staff has worked very hard to ensure that that document adheres to all requirements of the American Disabilities Act. It's accessible for people who are using programs to help get to the information that they need to see. We've provided online search tools so that you can easily locate information and provide comments specific to your interests. We also have an executive summary that has been interpreted into multiple languages. And we have additional translators who can go further if there are other questions around specific aspects. As we said, the document is on the website as listed on the page here or on the screen. There's also a number of physical copies available within the Portland, Vancouver area. And the program is planning 2 upcoming virtual public hearings to explain the content, answer questions, and help people make those comments. And those are coming up on October 1st and October 9th. And with that, I'm going to hand this back over to Greg.
Thank you, Chris. So you heard a lot of information. So this last 4 or 5 years since the program has been restarted has been one large effort to engage the community. And this is the keystone effort to get the community voices reflected in this document, to come and participate and comment upon the draft supplemental document. So we are very much looking forward to having this conversation with the community members and folks around each of these states who have an interest in this program. So there are numerous ways that you can comment. So we're going to have web-based forms, and you can see the website. You can email us comments, once again, at that location. You can send us comments through regular mail. We do accept that. You can also call our office. If you just want to pick up the phone, say your comment, we will transcribe it verbatim and make that part of the public record. You can come to our virtual or in-person public hearings, and we will have court reporters that will record, once again, verbatim your comments and make them a part of the public record. So you can provide your comments in your native language if English is not your first language. We will be having public hearings and open houses where folks can come, once again, and have that conversation with us, learn more, and then give their public comment to a court reporter that will become part of the public record. The first one will be on October 15th here in Vancouver at Clark College at Geyser Hall, and that will be from 5:30 to 8:30. We'll also have a second public hearing at the Portland Expo Center on October 17th between 5:30 and 8:30. And if you can't make those, we will have virtual public hearing events where we will once again record your comments verbatim. And those will be October 26th at noon and October 30th at 6 p.m. So once again, we're trying to give a wide variety of alternatives for folks to interact with us and tell us what they think of this program. If you like it, comment. If you hate it, comment. We want to hear from everyone. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Kimberly Webb to lead us through question and answers.
So thank you, Greg, and thank you, everybody, for hearing our presentation. So we are going to open up the question and answer portion. If you could please state your name and the outlet that you represent. My colleague Kellyanne will be coming around with the microphone for your questions, so please wait for her to come to you. Online viewers, we will welcome your questions, so please reach out to us via email with your questions and we will be following up with you. So with that, we'll open up for questions. Right here.
Hi, is this working? Hi, Carlos Fuentes, I'm with the Oregon. I believe it was Ray who mentioned that 660 jobs are gonna be affected, but you flew over that. Could you just elaborate a little bit on like what kind of jobs these are, and can you just clarify what you meant by affected?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Ray Navy, again, Assistant Administrator. With the acquisitions that I listed, several of those, I think 36, if I recall, would be businesses. It'd be the employees of those businesses that we would acquire. So once we acquire those businesses, the state's not going to be operating them. So the folks that would be working there would be displaced from their jobs. I don't have the specific information on the industry or what those are, but we could potentially get that, or it's in the document.
Thank you for the question. Yes.
Thank you. Joelle Jones with 26 years. And my question is for Program Administrator Craig Johnson. I know you spoke with our Ken Bobby just last month to kind of talk about this program, and you talked about a three-leg approach to the funding of this program. And we talked about, you know, the federal dollars, the grant, and historic grant commitments from both states. Can we talk about that third leg? I know that's a concern for many of our viewers.
Yes. So right now, via the legislature in each state, we have the ability to toll the I-5 bridge to help pay for the construction. We have a subcommittee of the transportation commissions in each state that is determining policy and rates that will apply to cross this structure. And so we are looking to raise between 1.1 billion and 1.6 billion to help pay for the construction of this bridge.
Hello, Dylan Jeffries with the Columbian. My question will probably be for Greg Johnson, but I know there's still concerns about Coast Guard approval, and I'm wondering if you could just speak to where those conversations are at, if that's still a concern for the program. And
So I'm going to actually turn this over to my colleague Ray, who is leading that effort.
Thank you, Greg. That's obviously a question when we get off the. As I mentioned in the presentation, we've got a fixed span in the LPA and a movable span option. We are pursuing a path of a movable span in the supplemental, but we're also working with the Coast Guard to seek a revised preliminary navigation clearance determination that would allow a path towards a bridge permit of 116 feet. So we're actually pursuing both paths. We are updating a navigation impact report, and Coast Guard will put that up for public comment. As we had our previous navigation impact report that they published, we did hear from 8 users, 3 fabricators and 5 vessels that they said they need more than 116 feet, and we engaged them to understand the impacts to their businesses and operations, and find ways to mitigate that in the agreement such that they're able to let the Coast Guard know that they can work with 116-foot bridge and lead to that revised determination. That's a path towards the bridge limit. So we're pursuing both paths. Coast Guard's been very good to work with, very cooperative with good information. And they got a process to follow, and we are working that process.
Okay.
Hi, Douglas Key with Point 6 News and also a Vancouver resident. How many houses are going to be affected by this, and where is the cutoff? Is it fourth plane and below, or are you guys going to be going all the way to 500? Because it looked like the last transit center was at fourth plane, and I live on Page Street, that's why I'm curious.
Ray, will you be able to answer that?
Sure. Yeah, I'll get the number, make sure I don't get it wrong here. Let's see. So I think I said we had, 43 residential units that would be acquired. I don't have the specific data of where those are along the alignment, but that information is in the supplemental draft.
Is it all below fourth plane now?
Again, I don't have information at the top.
I have him, we can point you to a map in the document that we, at the break, that will show you that information.
Okay.
Thank you. Any further questions? Yes.
It's just a follow-up question for Ray on that, on those 43 residential buildings. My question is, what is the next steps of that look like? Are we talking in an eminent domain? What does that look like, and how are you guys mitigating the impacts to people who live in those homes?
Great question. I think another fellow there asked a question about this as well, that it seemed like we just kind of went over that. I guess I want to make sure that we know that the impacts to businesses and people is real to us. And so we are taking every step to avoid and minimize those. And that's what this is, one of those steps is documenting those impacts in the project that we're studying, and receiving the comments and information from the residents, the business owners, the community, helps us refine the program in a way to help avoid those more, or mitigate them in a way that we can minimize those impacts. But we do have a Uniform Relocation Act that it guides all of our staff that need to work with the property owners. That requires them to provide fair market value after an appraisal. And we have lots of tools to work with businesses and owners to come to an agreement. We know that eminent domain, like you mentioned, is one of the last resort things that's on the table for us, and it's not a tool that we use lightly or willingly. So we want to make sure that we work with the community in a way that we all walk away whole.
Yes.
What outreach has been done? I just don't know. What outreach has been done to these families and businesses, and how much of an advance notice are they going to get before they have to move?
It's like I'm on the hot seat today. Another great question. Well, the information that's in the draft that came out today, and with this information coming out, we've sent mailers and flyers to those impacted property owners, so they can engage the program and get more information. But as we move the program forward and then document what we believe to be how the project will impact properties in the final supplemental environmental impact statement later next year, we will be working to then communicate again. But we will be communicating well in advance of construction with landowners, because we know that the appraisal process, the negotiation process takes time. We want to make sure that there's time built in, so nobody feels really rushed.
Nathan Masters with KGW News. Timeline for, because there's a lot of unknowns, single deck, double deck, drawbridge, just kind of why that's not kind of nailed down yet, and what the timeline is for getting that stuff nailed down.
So getting to those determinations are part of this draft supplemental process. We're going to hear from the public, from the community on what they want to see And once we get all those comments in, we're gonna take those, go through them very carefully, answer all of them, as well as then have a conversation with the 10 transportation partners about what we've heard and how they would like to see this design move forward. So we will be coming back in the final supplemental process, which starts as soon as we get all of the input from the draft process. And then we will propose what we plan on building. And all of those questions, 1 versus 2 auxiliary lanes, westward shift, all of those design options will get answered and proposed as to what we build. And that will happen between the closing of the 60-day public comment period and go on all the way until probably next summer.
Okay, I think this is the time for one final question.
I just have a clarification, sorry. For the 600 residents and businesses, does that span down into Oregon as well, or is this all in, and I apologize, getting the information to make your call, but is that both Oregon and Washington, or just Washington?
Great question. It's for the whole program area, so it's both Oregon and Washington.
That was a follow-up. So if there's any final questions, we'll take a last question now.
I got a
Yes.
quick question. Eric Williams of Peak TV. Are there any early estimates on the amount of jobs that will be created in the construction of this bridge?
Great, can you answer that?
Yes, we've done an economic analysis of the impact of this size of investment. And currently, we believe between direct construction jobs and secondary and tertiary jobs created for suppliers, for businesses that will help support the workforce. We anticipate over 43,000 person-hour jobs being created with this person-year jobs being created. So that's 1 year of work for one person, 43,000 times.
So with that, we will go ahead and close our Q&A. I want to thank you all for coming here today. As a reminder, our public comment period is open through November 18th. You can access the draft SEIS, provide your comments, and learn more about in-person and virtual events, including